China is a unique nation and has been the most populous on the planet for the last few centuries. Considering ethnic Chinese living in other countries, it's estimated that about 1 in 5 people on the planet are Chinese, 20%. The population of China in 2020 was 1.44 billion people. Recently, it's been announced that India, whose population in 2020 was 1.38 billion people, will soon be the most populated country on Earth. These countries are a contrast in government and society. India is a democracy, and most of its people adhere firmly to one religion or another, primarily Hinduism, but with large minorities of Muslims, Sikhs, and others. China is officially an atheist nation. India seems, at least to outsiders, chaotic and noisy. China is working hard to foster an image of order and calm. To do that, the Chinese have embarked on a radically new system of governmental control, which we will tell you more about in a moment. If you like hearing and learning about unusual topics from around the world, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thank you. Before you hear the first of our 5 unusual things about Communist China, take a moment to think about Western nations and cultures in the USA, UK, Germany, etc. The first item on our list will likely elicit thoughts of George Orwell's novel of a totalitarian future, 1984, and it probably should. However, a social credit system exists in the 3 countries just mentioned, though it is not formalized in one program or under one name. Think about it. When you apply for a student loan, home loan, credit card, and now even rent an apartment, your credit score is reported. If you have a low credit score and are trying to rent an expensive place to live, you will either be rejected or asked to put down more money as security. The credit score will often trump half a dozen good personal references. If you attended university and went to a small state-funded school in Montana, even if you earned honors every semester, you would likely be beaten out for white-collar jobs by good, but not outstanding, students from Harvard. That's social credit at work. Of course, people who have done time behind bars, no matter how long ago, will still rank low socially. In the United States, race all too often played and plays a role in one's social credit ranking. Though informal in the USA and elsewhere, there is a social credit system. But it's not formalized and it's not run through the government. Yet. In today's China, rules and the power of mass surveillance have combined to form a measure of social credit and social control previously unimagined except in bleak, post-apocalyptic novels. Of course, the totalitarian systems that once existed in China, the Soviet Union, and Nazi Germany effectively controlled most of their population without the benefit of today's technology. Still, they did not have access to your social media, bank information, contacts, messaging, camera, and much more, which exists on the smartphone most people carry in their pockets today. The Chinese government has the power and the right to monitor or investigate the contents of your cell phone at any time. This access is an aid in the modern Chinese social credit system. What is the Chinese social credit system, and what does it do? Though the system is still being implemented in more remote parts of the country, the social credit system monitors your activities in various ways. Everything public you do is given a rating. Imagine a nurse working in a hospital. Nurses help people. That gets you a high score. If that same nurse receives a traffic ticket on the way home, her score goes down. If she lives with her parents, still quite common for single people in China, and her father was once arrested for demonstrating against the government, her score goes down, for who knows what he might have told her. If she goes to traffic school, the score goes back up, and on and on. Suppose you develop a low social credit score. In that case, your chances of getting a well-paid job, a loan of any kind, which actually increases illegal loaning of money, but that's another story, or finding a good school for your children, become limited. The government will also limit your access to the internet, meaning speeds for people having the internet is a good thing, in terms of control. As you can see, in a supposedly classless society, which it has never been, the implementation of a social credit score will also affect your children, making it hard for them to get ahead, etc. However, there are means to do so. Join the army, become a government informer, etc. Unfortunately for many people worldwide, Googling a new acquaintance or love interest turns up items they would rather not be available to the public. Still, in many cases, one has to put some effort into finding out the details of a person and, in some cases, pay for the information. In China, you can go on a government website, similar to government-run sex offender websites in the USA, and see the number of lao lai, or deadbeats, in your neighborhood. Then, all you have to do is click on their names and see their court case number and the government's reasons for giving them a low social credit score. In many cases, contacts of the person are listed, so you can avoid them. Associating with people with low social credit scores will affect yours. How does the government know? First, the Chinese communists have had a system for monitoring the population since they took over in 1949. It's simple. A person, or persons, will be assigned to be a block or building official, and they will report anything they hear which is suspicious. For example, report your neighbor to the block official for criticizing a government program, and he gets detained. Your score goes up, and his goes down. Today, however, the cities of China have the most surveillance cameras in the world, bar one, London. However, while the Chinese cameras have and do help solve crime and terrorism as they do in London, they also keep an eye on people, districts, buildings, and more. Moreover, China is reported to have the world's most advanced facial recognition software. Are you loitering on the corner with a friend for too long? A computer picks that up. Facial recognition discovers your friend had a criminal charge for burglary. You have now been associated with a burglar. Your social credit score goes down, and you might not even know it happened. China's social credit system began in 2020, and between the economic slowdown and quarantines of the COVID pandemic, it has not yet been fully implemented, but it's thought to be close. What's more, an extension of this program has been extended to the top ranks of the Communist Party. Premier Xi Xinping has become increasingly totalitarian in his political thinking and seems to be growing a bit paranoid, for the Chinese economy is showing signs of real trouble underneath the veneer of success. Like Chairman Mao before him, Xi's political writings and actions have almost been codified as Xi Xinping Thought. Suppose you're in the top ranks of the Communist Party. In that case, you will be monitored closely, not only for your affinity for Xi Xinping Thought, but monitored for hostility to it and the potential for rebellion. Several news reports in 2022 have revealed the existence of a program for upper government officials in which they are required to answer a series of questions and look at various pictures. Easy, right? Lie. Nope. It was announced in the government-supported Study Times that a new system of artificial intelligence, which monitors people's reactions to images and statements, has been created, and that officials are required to take a test twice a year. Is this a polygraph, commonly known as the lie detector? No, it measures not only skin moisture, breathing, and blood pressure, like a polygraph, but also monitors the slightest changes in facial expression and muscle movements. Scientists have known that people show brief micro-expressions, even unconsciously, to things they like and dislike. Dislike a picture of Xi Xinping, and it is very definitely noted somewhere. If that wasn't bizarre enough, from the late 1950s until about 1960, China, which Chairman Mao Zedong ruled, undertook to move from the ranks of economically backward nations into the 20th century. This program was called the Great Leap Forward. Though the events of the Great Cultural Revolution, which followed the Great Leap Forward in the later 1960s, got more attention from many historians, the Great Leap Forward was a mass movement of unreal scale which involved hundreds of millions of people. Some of the goals of the Great Leap were to improve food production, increase steel production, spend more money on and develop modern armed forces, construct new water management systems like dams and irrigation, and more. Right from the start, there were problems. As had been done in the USSR during the rule of Stalin, no one wanted to be the one to report crop failures to their higher-ups, a chain that eventually led to Mao. During the Great Leap, many things conspired against its goals. Flooding in one part of the country, drought in another, locusts in another. Absolute incompetence was another factor, for urban workers and leaders were sent to the countryside to help increase production. What few leaders who possessed some knowledge of agriculture had either learned it from a book or had been children on farms. They had no agricultural experience whatsoever. Of course, there were exceptions, but they were few and far between. Those who did not know, and the few that protested that they might actually cause more harm than good, were told they were lacking in communist zeal and should learn on the job, that it was a matter of willpower. What it was a disaster. Between natural and man-made disasters, as well as over-reporting, famine set in. Hard up for hard currency, the Chinese government, believing that crop yields were huge, because no one wanted to be the one to say it wasn't, exported large quantities of food. People starved. Millions, perhaps 10 million. No one dared tell Mao that his Great Leap was failing, especially after all those good reports. When he visited a collective farm that was supposed to be succeeding, that's what he saw. For crops were brought to the farm, and healthy workers from elsewhere were shipped in. After a quick cursory tour, Mao famously went swimming in the Yangtze River. To most communists, even in a predominantly rural country like China was until recently, steel production was a vital indicator of both success and power. Until the late 1990s, Chinese steel was subpar at best. Today, it is competitive on the world market, but Chinese steel production was abysmal during the Great Leap Forward. Why? Firstly, what steel plants existed were not very modern and produced steel that might have been high quality in 1890. It wasn't, but not in 1958. Mao had an idea to increase steel production in absolute terms and for international audiences. People would make their own steel. Within days of mentioning this, millions of Chinese donated or dumped their pots, wrought iron gates, and most metal into communal areas and built kilns. Following a notion spoken of by Mao, these homemade kilns were theoretically supposed to make steel. And, with a population as large as China's, every extraneous pot mattered. Except, you cannot make steel out of tin pots, especially when mixed with iron ones. Not only that, but you cannot generate enough heat to make steel in a backyard oven. You need coal and its byproduct, coke. You can't generate that kind of heat with wood either, from either trees or furniture. Several things happened. Coal, needed for real factories, got sidetracked by corrupt officials attempting to make steel themselves. With the missing coal, industrial production went down across the board. Most ordinary people didn't have coal, but what they did have for heat went to making steel. Not only did people starve during the Great Leap, but they also froze in winter. Worse still, millions of trees were cut down, which created severe erosion problems and contributed to the famine. And none of the so-called steel made in lots and yards all over China was usable. None of it. Eventually, the truth did come out, and Mao only barely withstood a rebellion in the upper ranks of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. However, before the Great Leap Forward ended, government informants started reporting increased grumbling within the population, especially among the elite, professors, writers, teachers, those who help form public opinion. So, to encourage the inclusion of all the people and to improve society, Mao announced the 100 Flowers movement with the words, "Let 100 flowers bloom. Let 100 schools of thought contend." The population heard, "Let's all work together to improve things." From the elite to factory workers, many Chinese wrote poems, essays, and posters criticizing many government policies and suggesting improvements. The problem was that Mao didn't much like criticism after all. So, after about a year, the most outspoken critics were arrested and sent to re-education camps, where they were subject to cruel treatment. Many were given work in physically demanding jobs, like mining, in remote parts of the country, far from their families. For years. They were the lucky ones. No one knows how many were shot. Thousands. Maybe more. 10 years after the Great Leap Forward, Mao, somewhat reduced in power during the early 60s, announced another mass program, the infamous Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, often shortened to just the Cultural Revolution. In 1966, Mao announced this mass movement whose prime goal was to eliminate old, unfair Chinese ways, beliefs, and power structures, such as powerful landlords, and replace them with a new society. To do that, he called on the young people of China to take the country into their own hands and get rid of the four olds: old ideas, customs, culture, and habits. Soon, communist organizers and the young people of China, mainly in the urban areas, organized Red Brigades, and they essentially turned the country upside down. The Cultural Revolution lasted 10 years, and we will tell you more about it in an upcoming video. Still, one example will show you how bizarre and out of hand things got when teenagers ran the country. Literally. At the time, China had very few cars and trucks. The majority of them were in the capital, Beijing. To outdo each other in showing their communist zeal, rival gangs of Red Brigades competed in what they believed were measures to change society. One of these indirectly led to the end of the Red Brigades as a real force and the slow fading out of the Cultural Revolution, because it inadvertently caused traffic accidents, traffic jams, injury, and death. What did the Red Brigades do? Ordered the traffic lights changed. Not replaced, just hung upside down. Understand yet? Red is the international color of communism. In the minds of the Red Brigades, the color red meant progress, moving forward. So, red lights overnight meant go, and green lights meant stop. Hundreds of accidents ensued. This practice finally ended when Mao's right-hand man, the popular Zhou Enlai, finally spoke out against this nonsense and ordered it stopped. The Cultural Revolution continued until 1976, when the aged Mao finally passed, likely with some 20 million or more Chinese deaths to his credit. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe so we can bring you more content like this.